Hey everyone, Ace of Clay here, and welcome to another sculpting video. In this sculpting video, I will be sculpting a sculpture of an Orc Warrior. This design was particularly hard and complicated because I only gave myself 2 days to make it like an idiot. Not sure why I did that, but in the end, he turns out really cool and I really like him, and I hope you do too. So grab your snakes of clay, grab your spoon tools, grab some bacon bond, and let's get started. Alright, here we go. First step, armature. As always, all of the materials and tools that I use in this video are listed in the description box below, along with my affiliate links if you want to purchase anything. Once I have his body pretty much shaped out, it's time for some masking tape to hold it together, and I got a brand new roll right here. I kind of like the thicker masking tape better, but we're going to be using this kind until it runs out. So anyway, like I said, I am attaching the foil to the aluminum wire, like so, making sure that everything is really secure, and also making sure that it's looking pretty good before we add the clay. Now, I approached this sculpture the same way I approach pretty much every other one, not having a clue what I'm doing. But what I did know is that I wanted it to be stylized and sort of cartoony, not super realistic or anything, so kind of went with that. So he's got like the big feet, bigger legs, huge like upper body, torso area, and that's what I was working with to begin with. And as you saw there, I started adding all of the clay. And to get these nice even sheets, I rolled it through my pasta maker on the thickest setting. Now we're going through smoothing everything out, making sure that all of the limbs and everything are even and looking good before it's time to start adding the details. Now for the first set of details, I am making the boots and leg armor. I want these to look like they are leather boots with some metal on top of them. So I'm just sort of feeling out how I want these to look. I didn't look at very many reference photos. I did look at a couple just to kind of get an idea and make sure that I'm, I guess, doing things right, as much, whatever that means. So kind of go with that, and there's a lot of learning that goes on in this process as well, and you'll see that right here when I start adding the metal parts. I don't like those, so I take those off, and then I take off the second layer here and add a pounded metal texture with my medium ball stylus before adding that piece back and then giving that the same texture. So at this point I was still very clueless. Now we're adding that other piece of metal there, and we're going to give that the same texture too. Now we're kind of getting somewhere. I don't love it. I don't really have faith in what I'm doing yet, but that's okay. We're just going to keep going with these details until something good happens. After rolling out a small snake of clay and rolling that through my pasta machine, I am adding it to the bottom of the boots here. And this is, I guess, going to be a band of metal. Now we're just detailing the leather part of the boots by adding some seams and then adding some other details that I take off later on, but that's okay. It's all part of the process, right? Now we're just finishing off the top of the boots here and the armor. I guess that looks okay. Now we're going to go ahead and add some other details and make it a little bit fancier. One thing that I did have in mind when I was making the armor for this guy was that I wanted it to look like he got it from a bunch of different places. Like it's not all from one matching set. He sort of collects it, I guess, throughout his life and uses it. So that's the idea behind that. Once the legs are at a decent point, it's time to start adding the fabric texture for his pants. And here I am just using little snakes of clay, blending the edges in with everything else, and just adding a couple of those here and there. Now we're going to bulk out his chest a little bit so it's not so flat. Now I'm going to tell you right now, before I get any further, I am no master of sculpting male anatomy. This is actually my first time. I'm seriously winging this thing. Like, I'm referencing a couple figure studies on my computer, but that's it. And is this the best way to sculpt a chest? I don't know, probably not, but I got it to a point that worked for my sculpture and what I needed it to look like, and, you know, the stylized nature I was going for. And that's that. So with all that said, if you can't tell already, I want this guy to be really fit and big. So I'm just trying my best to achieve that. And while I'm sculpting the chest, I'm brainstorming ways I can cover it with clothing and armor so that all or most of it doesn't have to show. So needless to say, this was definitely outside of my comfort zone. Alright, now once I've gotten the abdomen and pectoral muscles to a decent point, it's time to add the arms. To add these, I just poked a hole through the side with a bamboo skewer and then stuck in a piece of aluminum wire. Now I'm just covering that wire with some aluminum foil and some clay. The arms on this guy were a little easier than the chest, and I really wasn't expecting that. I think it was because, you know, after getting the chest to a decent point, my confidence was up a little bit, and I just trusted the figure study that I was looking at. After the first arm is looking pretty good, it's time to start the second, and I'm just crossing my fingers hoping that this goes smoothly. Alright, now that the chest and arms are looking pretty good, I'm not sold on the boots or the armor on the legs yet, so I'm just making the top thicker like that, and I think this looks much better. It's a little bulkier, more substantial. After getting all those details on again, just giving them a nice pounded metal texture. Alright, this thing is looking really weird, and it's about to look even weirder, so because I don't really know what I want to do with it, I am giving him this little like loincloth thing, and yeah, I don't know, it doesn't look very good like that. So now we're gonna add some fabric to his upper body here, and I just rolled that through my pasta machine on the 4 setting, and I'm detailing it by folding it different directions and using my ball stylus, and then I made 2 of them to kind of cross each other like that. And then what are we gonna do for this thing? Does that look good? No. Let's finish off the back here first, and then we'll figure out what's gonna go around the waist. Does it look good now? No. Maybe I just don't like the crossed pieces of fabric. So let's put that piece here and see how that looks. Nope. Now I'm just trying to get an idea for what like a big animal fur would look like on his shoulder. So instead, let's add some random belts to his legs. Alright, let's see if this looks good now. No. What about a smaller one? Will the smaller one win? It does! The small one wins. Now we're just gonna add another strap over his shoulder there with a little belt clip. And then around the smaller band around his waist, I'm adding some fur. I really like how this looks. Now we're finally getting somewhere. Now to finish off the band around his waist, I'm just going to add a gemstone, a giant rhombus gemstone. And we're gonna stick that on and detail some other stuff. Now, just in case this part is showing when it's done, I have to give it a nipple, so there's the nipple. Time to brush it with clay softener to remove fingerprints and get them in the oven. That's looking pretty good. Then out of the oven, once he's cooled down, it's time to add some more details and armor. I'm just adding this leather piece over his shoulder here that I cut out, and now I'm just making a metal piece that will go over that. just as an added detail to that leather piece, I'm adding a seam down the middle with some stitching. And then before committing to the metal piece, just seeing how it looks. And I like it, so we're gonna add it with some bacon bond, like that. That looks pretty good. It was at this point, I think, that I fully trusted this thing, because there were a couple points before where I just wanted to throw it in the trash and make something else, but I'm glad I didn't. Now we're just making him a nice little armband here as my tripod falls over. This matches the nice band around his waist. And now I'm making some skulls that he's going to have hanging from his belt. And I just sculpted these from balls of clay that I pressed onto my large ball stylus, and that worked pretty well. Then once the skulls are done and attached, I just want to make some rope, so I just rolled out 2 very thin snakes of clay and twisted them together like that, and I'm just wrapping them around the skulls, so they're kind of just hanging there. Now it's time for his weapon, and I've decided on a giant hammer. I threw around a couple ideas, maybe an axe, maybe a sword, but I like the idea of a hammer because it could just be so obnoxious. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I just made that sort of marshmallow shape, attached a bamboo skewer, added some clay over that with some bacon bond, and I'm just shaping out the handle. Now we're just gonna create some leather wrapping. Then once the handle's done, I'm just texturing the hammer part and adding some fabric over it. And I made this fabric the same way as I made the fabric around his waist. Then we're going to add some ropes, finish it off. Then as a final detail, I'm just texturing the exposed parts of the handle to look like wood. And there we go. Time to bake it. After it's baked, I'm just going to attach it to his body by wrapping the exposed wire in his arm around the handle, and then I just cover that with his hand. But before we make the hands, we're going to make his head. And I just shaped out his skull with aluminum foil, covered that in clay, added a bamboo skewer so I can hold on to that and not smash everything. Now we're just adding the eye sockets with my large ball stylus, and then shaping those out with my fingertips. And then if you can't tell, I wanted him to have a very elongated face. And I just used my spoon tool there to press in some smile lines, deepened his eye sockets. Now we're just adding the eyeballs, and we want these to be the exact same size, so I made both of them before adding them to the head. Made his brow a little angrier looking. Now we're going to add some eyelids and bags under his eyes. Not too bad. After shaping some things out with my fingers, I am just going to make a very large brow bone. And then here I'm using a brand new tool to work on the brow bone, my double-ended burnisher from Excel Blades. If you're interested in having this tool as well, head on over to excelblades.com and use code ACEOFCLAY for 15% off your purchase. And then there's also a link down below if you want to check it out. Now we're just detailing his nose a little bit, and then I'm going to use my Excel pin tool to create the nostrils. And just really quick, I did have an opportunity to play with these tools a little bit before putting them in this video, and I do have to say that they're really nice. They have a really good weight to them, and you can just tell that they're good quality. I'm usually really picky when it comes to sculpting tools, and I think these work great. And in addition to that, I have seen their blades and whatnot on Instagram before being used by other artists, so I knew who they were before they reached out to me. So if you're in the market for some new tools, I can say that I recommend Excel blades, and I would never recommend something that I personally do not like. After finishing up some of the details on his face, it's time to add some gigantic teeth. I'm adding 2 large fangs on his bottom jaw, and he's going to have a pretty big underbite. Normally when I add teeth like this, I pre-bake them and then poke the hardened teeth into the clay, but I really just didn't feel the need to with this because I wasn't going to smash them just with how they were positioned. So now we're just adding that lower jaw and chin area, blending everything together. That's looking pretty good. I was really happy with his head at this point, I remember. Now we're just adding some wrinkles with my Explorer tool all over the place. Not really all over the place though, putting them in areas where they make sense, of course. And then we're just finishing them off. I bulked out his chin a little bit more so that it sticks out a little further at the bottom. Finishing off those wrinkles again. Adding a little dotting texture to his chin and other areas of his face. And he's looking pretty good. Now let's add some ears. Wow, check it out. Looks exactly how I pictured him. Now before I pre-bake the head, I'm just brushing the surface with clay softener to remove fingerprints, and we're on to the hands. Then once the first hand is done, I just trim it to size and add it to that exposed wire on the arm and blend the clay in with the rest of the arm. Now I'm just bulking out the arm just a little bit because it was looking kind of skinny, and just getting it to a point that I like. Alright, that's looking pretty good. And now it's time to make a couple gauntlets for the arms. And to make these, I just doubled up 2 flat pieces of clay and then detailed them before attaching them with bacon bond. But before I attach the gauntlets, I have to add some straps that'll hold them in place. Don't want them to just be floating on the arms. Then once the gauntlets have been attached, I'm just adding one final detail to his arm, this nice little band of fabric. And he's ready for another bake. And then once he's baked and completely cooled down after attaching his head, it's time to decide on a hairstyle. I was thinking like a ponytail, maybe a big braid, I don't know, but these weren't really doing it for me. So we ended up with a mohawk. And to attach the mohawk, I just added a little bit of bacon bond there. I'm adding the snake of clay, pinching it at the top to bring it to a point. And there's the start of our mohawk. And then on this episode of Let's Make This Take Longer, I decided to finish off his hair by adding individual little tufts, like so. Yes, this made the process a little bit longer, but in the end it was totally worth it because I love how this turned out. And then after all of these little tiny snakes of clay have been added, I just detail them with my Explorer tool, and he's ready for his final bake. Once he's baked, we are going to paint his skin using FolkArt Crocodile, Driftwood, and Pure Black. And then after mixing those 3 colors together, I got this nice green color that works as a perfect base for our orc's skin. After a couple coats of that green, I'm going to tint the green with a little bit of FolkArt Buttercup, just to add some highlights and a little bit of a yellow tinge. Then just to highlight him a little bit more, I'm going to add a little bit of Boulder to that mix of colors and highlight everything again with that. Then once that layer of paint is completely dry, I created this dark green wash by adding a little bit of pure black to my green color, and then I watered that down. And I'm just painting that all over the surface and then just sort of removing the excess with a paper towel and my fingertips. Alright, say it with me. That's looking pretty good. Alright, on to some more highlighting. I added a little bit more Buttercup to my highlight color. I'm just really going to town with it. Now we're going in with a fine paintbrush to paint in some of that dark green wash and really get it into the nooks and crannies and push the detail as much as possible. Then for his eyes, we're going to go in with a base color of Hot Saffron, and this is a very vibrant orange tone. I thought this was perfect for him. I love how it looks with the green. And then to highlight the eyes, added a little bit of yellow light in the center. And I don't give him any pupils or irises. Now to paint his teeth, I am mixing Golden Ochre, Buttercup, and Driftwood together to get this nice yellow tone. Then to heighten all the details on the teeth, I created this dark brown wash by adding a little bit of brown to that yellow mixture I created. We're just going over the whole thing. Once that's dry, we're highlighting them a little bit with some straight Buttercup, and now we're painting the mohawk black. Then once that black base coat is completely dry, I am just dry brushing some brown over the top to bring out the details. Now it's time to paint the armor on his feet. I am painting it black first because I'm going to go over this with a metallic color. And metallics always look better over black or darker colors. But before we paint the metallics, we are just going to paint the leather with some brown. Now we're going in with some of that silver. Now I like the look of the silver, but I don't like it for him, so we're just going to go over it with some bronze. And when I did this, some of the silver did show through, but I like how it turned out, so I left it. I didn't do another coat of the bronze. That's looking good. Now we're going to paint the gauntlets a similar color scheme. Now we're going to paint the fabric over his shoulder. This nice beige tone. I made this using titanium white, a little bit of driftwood, and Buttercup. Now I'm just painting the leather brown, and he's almost done. We're getting there. Now while I finish painting this guy up, I just want to say that he is a really good example of the phrase, never give up. Like I mentioned earlier, there were so many times that I wanted to throw this thing in the trash or across the room, but I didn't, and I'm really happy that I stuck with it because he ends up being one of my favorite sculptures. Was some of my stress because of time? Yes, of course it was. Remember, I gave myself 2 days to make this guy. But even if I had months to make him, I still would have wanted to throw him in the garbage at certain points. So if you're in the middle of a project right now and you're not sure where to go, just push through. Be sure to take breaks, of course. I took a lot of breaks with this thing. Don't be so hard on yourself. Relax. Remember to breathe and just give it your best shot. You never know. just might surprise yourself, just like I did. Alright, we're getting close. I took out some of the parts where I'm just painting stuff black because that's pretty self-explanatory. You don't really need to see me do it every single time, so just did that. Now I'm just adding the final top coats to everything, like that, painting up that metal piece on his shoulder, using some gold and bronze for that, adding some copper touches. Now we're finishing off the hammer with some pewter. And then I start painting the band of fabric brown, but then realize it would look better over black. Finishing up the skulls, like so. Finishing up that fabric, adding another layer of brown, and then painting the ropes. Now I'm just going to antique the armor a little bit with a black wash, heighten the detail, give it more dimension. Then for the last and final step, I'm going to top off the gemstone on his belt with some color shift blue-violet flash. And this is a really nice purplish to gold iridescent color. And he's done! The Orc Warrior is complete! Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm so proud of this guy, and I hope you like him too. And that's a wrap. I really hope you like the Orc Warrior. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this guy, so let me know what you think. As always, thank you so much for being here. The music was provided by Tiff Music. I will link his YouTube channel and his Patreon down below. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Ace of Clay, and I will see you in the next one.